everybody. So nice to meet you guys. My name's like they said, Amy Wiwuga. I am the organizing director and a political advisor on Yes for Proposition 16. My background is my political background is started off with I was a fellow with President Obama's issue advocacy group, Organizing for Action, while he was in the administration. So we advocated for everything that was on his agenda, raise the wage, climate protection, a lot of immigration issues, which are, right now so important. My favorite issue, and what kind of launched my career was when the Affordable Care Act was passed, implementing it in California. So getting as many people as we could in California to sign up for the insurance portion of the Affordable Care Act, but also letting people know about the consumer protection things in the Affordable Care Act. So everybody kind of thinks the Affordable Care Act is like, government healthcare. It is in one part of it. There's also like a ton of laws, like now insurances have to treat mental health like they treat physical health. Same standards. Kids can be on their parents' insurance until they're 26. It used to be 18. Things like birth control and preventative medicines have to be covered 100%. Preventative vaccines have to be covered 100% by your insurance. It's like a whole bunch of laws to help protect people. So it was my job to teach people about those laws. And we would always say, we need to get as many people to sign up, because one day if they ever try to take it away, it'll be hard to take away something that people like. Never thinking that day would happen. Foreshadowing. Anyways, after that I did a stint. So I got hired on. I worked as a state director under the Obama administration, which was awesome. After that, I did some global health advocacy. So more getting vaccines to developing countries in Africa, trying to lower the maternal health rate, things like that. And then when Donald Trump was elected, that job, I got laid off because we knew that there wasn't a lot of foreign policy work that was going to be done. The incoming administration probably wasn't going to be as friendly as the outgoing one. So I got laid off, but I was lucky enough to get hired on with this organization called Health Access California. By far one of my most favorite jobs. What they do is they enforce the Affordable Care Act. So they make sure that big pharma and doctors and hospitals are regulated, so they're not taking advantage of the consumer. One of the biggest things that we did, well, two big things, right after the EpiPen crisis, we did the country's largest price transparency law. So if big pharma was going to raise, they did, the EpiPen, they'd have to give a 60-day notice and all of these reasons. And it's there was never a law like that before. So now it's a lot harder for life-saving medications to skyrocket. We were also the first state to be able to give 18 to 26-year-old undocumented immigrants access to our state healthcare, Medi-Cal, or our Obamacare. So that was really cool. And then when they tried to repeal the ACA, I led the fight in Orange County to try to get those members to not repeal the ACA. This was in 2017. And for the members that voted to repeal the ACA, we made sure that the community knew that these members of Congress are trying to take away healthcare that helps so many people. They all voted for it. None of them have jobs anymore. So that was really fun. But that was the consumer advocate work. So I loved the idea that people would vote for things if they got connected to them, if they knew why it was important in their lives. And so from there, now I work on all types of different political campaigns. I design the political campaigns and execute them on the ground. Usually I much prefer issue advocacy. So all the different laws I had mentioned, because what I find is even with wonderful people like Obama, he's there somewhere over there, Politicians leave, like they come and they go. But the laws that they pass are the legacy. The laws that they pass are the things that are going to help people for as long as we uphold them, or hurt people. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So here I find myself with you guys. I love California because the job I used to do when I did global health was for the laws for the United States. And like when I worked at that job, I passed one law, and that was, I passed one law. When I worked for Health Access, which was only California, so only working on California state laws, I think my first year there, we passed like 16 laws. The California legislative system is very ambitious. It's very transparent. You hear like a lot of times like laws don't pass because in Congress at the federal level because they put a rider, poison pill, and they add different things, and like that's not how it is in California. Whoever writes the bill, they're the only ones that can add to it. And bills have to go through a sequencing order, and they have to be heard by a certain timeline. In the federal government, a bill can get introduced and then it never gets heard from again. So like you can do so much here. We take federal bills and we make them better, you know. So yeah, it's really cool. I love California. I love the law. So I'm going to share my screen, and this is kind of outdated, but I just want to take 2 minutes. And I just want to make sure we're all, we all understand. This is the federal. So hold on. I'm going to give me just 1 second. Okay. This is old, so this presentation is like a tad bit old, so these people aren't the same people that are in office, but you'll get the idea. I haven't talked about how a bill has become a law in a hot second. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna go through this super fast, but so again, this is from Obama's last year, President Barack Obama's last year. Okay, so everybody knows that there's 2 branches of government at the federal level. There's a House of Representatives and there's the Senate, okay? The House of Representatives, we get 1 member for every 700,000 people in a state. So for example, California, we have 55 versus like Colorado has 5. I hope that's Colorado. Nevada has 5. I know that's Nevada. Anyway, so every state has a different representative based on based on their population. So example, some of our House of Representatives people that you might know, Nancy Pelosi serves in the House, Ted Lieu, Adam Schiff, all the Maxine Waters are claiming my time, Katie Porter, we hear a lot about Katie Porter. Those are all representatives. So those are all part of the 435. Whichever party, Democrat or Republican, has the most members in the House they get the speaker. The speaker is the one that decides which bills come to the floor for a vote. So how I said earlier, like bills can die, like because that guy the speaker used to be Paul Ryan, now it's Nancy Pelosi because now the Democrats have more people. So that guy says, I want the body to vote on this bill, which is so unfair. To California, every bill gets heard. So how the Senate works is the Senate is 2 people for every state. So we all have the same amount of senators. We know our senators are Dianne Feinstein and Kamala Harris. So, you know, and so right now there's more Republican senators in the Senate. So Mitch McConnell is still the Speaker of the House. The Democrats won't get the Speaker of the House unless they get more seats. So that's the balance of the power. For a bill to pass through, for a bill to become a law, it has to pass the Senate and the House, and then the president has to vote yes on it. So, so those three things have to come together. And if they all, if they passes through both houses, it goes to the president signs it. So that's how the federal government works. Stop screen sharing. That's how the federal government works. We have the same system at the state level. So the state level, the Barack Obama would be Governor Gavin Newsom. We have a state assembly, which is the more like representatives. And the leader of the Nancy Pelosi of the state assembly, his name's Anthony Rendon. And the Mitch McConnell of the state Senate, her name is Toni Atkins. They're all Democrats, so there's there's a super majority, so that's why we're so blue and our laws are so progressive, because we don't really have a ton of Republican opposition in California, which is a good thing and a bad thing, no judgment. So that's how a bill becomes a law, right? So propositions, what are propositions? Propositions are, we can't do this on the federal level. We can only do it at the state level. It's when a bunch of people come together and they say, I want this law. There's two ways to do it. We all know petitions at Trader Joe's. That's what that is. Signing a petition is saying, I want this law on the ballot. So read those petitions, because sometimes they try to trick you. Don't just sign blindly, please. If you take anything away from that today, don't blindly sign petitions. So the number of petitions that you have to get to qualify for the ballot are based on how many people voted for in the last governor election. So for the election that we put Gavin Newsom into place, it's I forget, it's like 70% of the number of people who voted is like what you have to get in petitions. Maybe not 70, I don't know the percentage, but that's how that works. So if they get the petitions and the state of California verifies most of the signatures, they do spot checks. If they find a bunch of signatures that don't work, then they'll do like that aren't good. That triggers like a big review, and then it could get kicked out because the petitions weren't done right or whatever. So that's the first way to get on the ballot. The second way to get on the ballot, which is how Prop 16 got on the ballot, is through an amendment to the California Constitution. So ACA 5, Assembly Constitutional Amendment. It has to go through our Assembly and our state Senate. But it doesn't go to the governor. So it goes through the Senate, the Assembly and the state Senate. And what it has to go, where everything else, you need a 50+1 vote. So half, and then you win, like half the votes. But for a proposition or a constitutional amendment, you need 2/3 of both houses to vote on it. So ACA 5 got introduced by Dr. Shirley Weber. And that is where I'll go into my other presentation. And then can you guys time check me? How much time do I have left?
Sorry, that took me forever. You have until about 12:40.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. I'm going to share my screen one more time. Share screen. And I'm going to share this one. Oh, share audio too. There we go. Okay, 12:40. Okay, everybody can see that?
Yes.
That's me. That's who I am. Amy S on Prop 16. That's all of our social media. We even have a TikTok because we have some students making TikToks. So check out our Yes on 16 TikTok. Okay, so Dr. Shirley Weber presented this bill, ACA 5, or a constitutional amendment, to repeal Prop 209. Prop 209 was a Pete Wilson era law. And I don't know, a lot of you guys look young. I don't know if you guys know who Pete Wilson is. He was our second to last Republican governor. He was the governor right before, or he was the governor, not right before, he was the last Republican governor before Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was very divisive. You might have heard about Proposition 187. It restricted all these things around immigrants. It eventually got overturned, but it was things around like immigrants using, public benefits and getting driver's licenses and not speaking Spanish in schools. Like, just a very dark time in our time as a state, because in California we really know that our diversity is what makes us strong. We're not perfect, but we try really hard to be inclusive here, and we get so many things right. So to have to go through all that was really hard. So Prop 187, look it up if you haven't, but it's an important part of our history to know as Californians. But then after that was Prop 209. Prop 209 was written in a very misleading way. It was kind of considered the colorblind law, that everybody should be considered for everything. We should not consider race and gender in public hiring, contracting, college admissions, and education program. So that was called affirmative action. So in 1996, we banned affirmative action because we don't see color. We want to be, very forward-thinking society where everybody has a chance to be lifted up. But what it really did was it took away the ability for, say, I'll use an example from my breakout session. For example, STEM programming. We know that young girls of color oftentimes do not go into STEM careers, right? So say we wanted to do, the city college district wanted to do a program where they maybe mentor high school students and then, get them into programs or whatever. You can't do that. You can't specify one group of people that has like a disadvantage or a problem getting to that level. You have to give those STEM programs to everybody, but everybody doesn't have the problem of, some people don't have the problem getting to those. But now we can't do that, right? Now we can't target individualized communities that might need more help than others. Things like that, making sure that like women contractors are getting the same amount of public contracts that men are. And so when we took away all those, the ability to consider those things, we saw women and minority businesses lose over $1 billion worth of contracts. A lot of times right now you see that women and minority businesses are the first ones collapsing in this COVID economy because they don't have the resources and there's no programs to help them, because that would be a program based on race and gender. So it really just made everything, yeah. So anyway, so it was supported by Ronald Reagan and the GOP. Many of the same people that are opposing Prop 16 today. ACA 5 is the closest that we've ever come to repealing, or now Prop 16 is the closest we've ever come to repealing Prop 209. So Shirley Weber is this awesome woman. She's a assembly member out of she's assembly member out of, you said 1240? Okay, she's assembly member out of San Diego. She got together with Ms. Gail Santiago, who's an assembly member out of LA, whoop whoop, AD 55, which is like downtown and the kind of the more the east side areas, kind of to part of our city that generally tends to like struggle with homelessness and whatnot. So these two groups came together and they said, we want to do this bill to repeal Prop 209. So let's see if this works. Otherwise, I'll drop it in the chat box. What is affirmative? So this is what is affirmative action? Affirmative action is, sorry. I started a little bit early, but thumbs up if you could hear it and see it. Yay, woo! Marissa, I'm learning. So affirmative action is a tool of fighting systemic and racial and gender discrimination by empowering equal opportunity for people that have been historically disadvantaged. We see that this could help Black, Latino, Indigenous, Asian American people, as well as women. And we just want to work so that everybody gets a chance to reach their full potential. So here's our little commercial. Oh, that's our commercial. It's our little graduate. Okay.
In California, we believe that everyone should have an opportunity to thrive with fair wages, good jobs, and quality schools. But the truth is, a wealthy few are overrepresented in positions of power. While many Californians are discriminated against because of what they look like or where they're from, women do the same work as men, but are paid 80 cents for every dollar. Women of color and single moms are paid even less. And while small businesses are the backbone of our economy, nearly all government contracts are awarded to large companies run by older white men. Despite their hard work, women and people of color are not given the same opportunities. Prop 16 would give everyone a fair shot at rising to the top. We could close the wage gap by making sure women and people of color are employed and promoted fairly. We could ensure that government contracts are equitably awarded and that everyone has access to a quality public education. We are in a historic moment as we fight for racial justice and to protect those hit hardest by COVID-19. Together, we can take a stand against discrimination and reshape our systems so all Californians have the opportunity to thrive.
Awesome, that was our first commercial. So Prop 16 fights systemic gender and racial discrimination by ending the ban on affirmative action programs. We know with affirmative action programs, we can level the playing field for everyone. So what would Prop 16 do? Prop 16 would align California with 41 other states. We are one of only 9 states that doesn't allow for affirmative action. We're actually behind Kentucky and Texas, both of which offer affirmative action. So that's pretty crazy. What would programs look like? So all these things that we want to do that would allow Prop 16 to do. And again, Prop 16 wouldn't establish like any laws. It would just say that we can now in our programming with public institutions and schools that we can make programs. So it's not like Prop 16 says establishes any, it just says, okay, now you can consider it. So the programs like that might be that could close the wage gaps, would be ensuring that women are fairly considered in advancement and promotions at work. We saw a recent California law that said 50% of all women on all public boards have to have 50% of women. So it could be something like that, or investment opportunities like I brought up in K through 12 education, where we do maybe STEM for girls, college and career counseling for high school students who are most in need of closing racial equity gaps, ensuring business owners owned by women and minority business owners could have access to public contracts, and in higher education, expanding resources for students to help them reach their full potential and grow our populations of diverse professionals to serve our communities. So that's actually a really good point. I'm 42 years old. I've never had a Black doctor and I've never had a Black teacher in my life, and neither of my kids. So we need, why don't we have more Black doctors? Do we need mentorships, you know, in colleges to help them graduate? Like, what do those programs look like? So all Prop 16 would do would be let us study those systemic causes and then come up with the best solutions to what we could get accomplished. And I'll stop there because the video kind of covered everything of what I said. But in the last few minutes, I'll just say that, you know, people should join in support, Gavin Newsom, Senators Kamala Harris and Dianne Feinstein, Mayor Garcetti, Planned Parenthood, ACLU, the UC Board of Regents, so the governing body of the UC system, Gloria Steinem, Dolores Huerta, Bernice King, on behalf of the Martin Luther King Foundation, his daughter, she actually signed our ballot argument. So if you open up your voter guide and you read the ballot arguments, Bernice King signed ours. The opposition's ballot argument was signed by a woman, Gail Heroit. She sits on the federal Civil Rights Commission, and she was appointed by Mitch McConnell. So that's who signed theirs. Bernice King signed ours. So I would just say join us in the fight for racial and gender equality. It's on the ballot in California. We can come together to support opportunity for all Californians. Like I said, Prop 16 ends the ban on affirmative action to level the playing field for women and people of color. We want to, in California, give everybody, regardless of their race or where they were born or their gender, a shot at fair wages, a shot at good jobs, a shot at like our wonderful California economy and these amazing schools that we invest so much in. So, you know, we're not there yet. We know we're not there yet. So we talked about how women earn 80 cents on the dollar. That's white women to men. Latinas earn 42 cents on the dollar to men. And when women are getting government contracts, they're paid at 29 cents on the dollar to men. So there are so many problems that Prop 16 can start help addressing, and how we can look at taking meaningful steps to end this. And like I said, you know, we're one in only 9 states that doesn't have affirmative action programs. And so Prop 16 is our chance to fight discrimination without quotas. There are no quotas quotas are illegal by the Supreme Court. So it's not like Prop 16 is going to say UCLA now needs to be half Black kids. It doesn't work like that. It's just, let's study the systemic problems. Let's put into place programs and solutions that might change that. So there you go. Vote for Prop 16. I will now open for questions. Questions about Prop 16 or the legislative process. Do I have a link to the presentation I can put in the chat? Yes, I do. Yes, you can type your questions. You can do it, yeah, either.
Oh, cool. I thought I couldn't turn off mute. Hi, thank you for the talk. I'm Chris. I'm just a resident in LA. I was wondering, so you mentioned that 41 other states don't have this sort of ban. And I was wondering if there was like a measurable impact that we can see, because obviously I'm going to vote yes on this prop, but I was just wondering if, you know, in these 41 other states, do we actually see a big impact on the lack of a ban on affirmative action policies? Because, yeah, you know, there's a lot of other factors that go into it, so it's probably really hard to measure, but I'm hoping that there is, in general, a positive trend on having these AA actions, or a lack of AA bans. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Our studies really only focus on California, and our major study that we cite is that since the ban on affirmative action, women and minority business owners have lost over $1 billion in public contracting. That's our biggest one. Our opposition, funny enough, will oftentimes say since Prop 209 was passed, more people of color were admitted to the UC system, and that is completely true. But since 1996, the UC system hasn't started enrolling a lot more students. Like the capacity of people that could go to UCs have gone up. So when the capacity goes up, well, of course, more people are going to get in. So yes, more people of color have gotten in to UCs, but it's not, the percentage isn't keeping up with how many new admissions were opened up, right? So you might see that since Prop 209 passed, that maybe it's climbed 8%, but you see admissions has climbed like 30%. So it's studies like that that we generally tend to cite, and those are all on our website. Vote yes on prop16.org. There's a facts section. But yeah, we don't really compare ourselves to other states just because California is the 5th largest economy in the world, second behind France. So it's kind of hard to compare California to Iowa.
Yeah, I figured. Thank you.
But check out our website. Very good question, Chris.
Oh yeah, I'm reading the facts page, but I was listening to you first. Thank you.
I think I see Natana has her virtual hand raised.
I'm being a good student in the virtual world, trying to raise my hand. I'm just really curious to know how it's polling. I first of all, shocked that you are 42 years old. Whatever you're doing it right.
Good black track. That's what you say.
But I remember 2009 and when it passed, and kind of a little surprised. But I mean, it was a different generation. You're right. It was like the I don't see race generation, and we're in a different place where we're like, oh no, race actually is something that we really should see. So I'm just really curious to see how Prop 16 is polling.
Polling horrible.
Yeah.
There's a chance we might not pass, which is really sad, because one thing that I skipped because I went too long on the legislative process because I'm so passionate about it is that to get to make it through the Assembly and the State Senate, COVID happened, so we only had 2 weeks, and it was impossible because in both chambers had to hear it, and both chambers never hear everything in 2 weeks. It's usually like over 3 months. So while people really wanted it, it just was impossible. They were only doing bills about COVID. This was in March and April. But our campaign angel, George Floyd, happened. And the murder of George Floyd just caused so much awakening and awareness. I don't want to say awakening, but an awareness around these systemic things that are just holding some communities back, right? And that how exciting that we know that this stuff is breaking our heart, and we know that communities are getting held back, and we know that it's not just something that you can fix on the topical level. It's about not only getting police not to kill them, but get them out of these, situations where they can't thrive. I grew up in the Mar Vista projects, and I'm very lucky to be somebody that made it out, but that's not the same for a lot of people that I grew up with, and you know that. So anyways, George Floyd happened, and our legislators, because they're wonderful, like huddled around this and got it passed super fast, because they knew that it would be something that California could do something for our people that could make things better, right? So it passed really fast, but it is a very difficult thing so it passed really fast, so we haven't had a time to ramp up this huge big campaign. Like, we're a very new campaign versus some of the propositions have been working on the ground for like 2 years. So our polling is bad when people read just the ballot language, because the ballot language says overturns California's consideration of race and gender. So people think intuitively, oh wait, now they're going to start looking at race and gender. And we see that our Latino population, which is so important to win, we need 74% of Latinos to vote for this to win. We see them scared of this bill, because look what's happening with ICE. So they're going to know my race, they're going to know my gender, they're going to come and get, they're going to come at me, they're going to come at my community. So we have to shift people's mindset that that's not actually what it means. So our polling, when people read just the ballot language, is horrible. We lose. Once they get a minute amount of education, even that commercial, even hearing the validators, once they hear that people like the Dodgers endorse it, when the Dodgers ever endorse laws. Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, ACLU. Once people hear all that, our support goes out the roof. Like then, you know, once it's explained to them, but the problem is that we need people to explain it. We need people to do phone banks. And then we also, on the other side, we need money to run our ads that explain it. So the polling is bad if it's just they're looking at just the ballot and they don't know anything about Prop 16. But once it's explained to them and once they learn who supports it, then it's a slam dunk. So we'll see. 86% of our 86% of the people we polled don't know anything about Prop 16. 80% of those 80% of those 86% are going to vote for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. So it's not too hard. Like we have the progressive people on our side. We just have to, you know, explain it to them. Long answer to your short question.
No, it was good, but it brings up the fact that like sometimes the ballot language is the worst enemy of the ballot measure.
On purpose. They do that on purpose. They do it on purpose. They do. It's completely meant to, because this ballot measures, and that's how I wanted to explain the whole process, but ballot measures circumvent the legislative process. Ballot measures can make a law for the state that normally would have to go through the two houses and signed by the governor. So if you want to get a law passed that you know you can't get passed through the legislature, you do a ballot measure. That's what you're kind of seeing with the, you know, some of the other things that are trying to get passed right now. In my personal opinion, I think that's the case too with the gig worker bill. I don't think that's getting explained well. But yeah, they're not meant to be easily understood, which is a bummer. It's really a bummer because there's so much capacity to do so much good. Any other questions?
I've got one, Amy. Would it be possible for you to drop your website in the chat so we can have that as a resource as we're working and listening to our next speaker?
Absolutely. I will do that right now.
Thank you.
Any final questions? Okay, so let's, I think we're good to go to the next speaker, and I will vote yes on Prop 16. The two things I like the most on this website are the about has our facts, and then the endorsements. Like the endorsements there's very few people that we don't have, so that's super helpful. And then I know that you guys are going to do some news, and I'll just say you're going to work on editorials, which I just think is awesome. I'll just say look at the news section because we have a lot of great editorials on that. So it'll kind of give you an idea of how different perspectives write about Prop 16. We love the one that the LA Times did. It sums up how we want it to be summed up perfectly. So yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you so much, Amy. Let's give her a big virtual or real round of applause. And I will now hand the mic over to Sue Horton, who is here with us from the LA Times, who's going to be talking to us a little bit about how to write op-eds. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Sue.
And again, Sue, well done on the Prop 16 LA Times.
Very glad to hear that. So I'm the op-ed editor at the LA Times, and just in case you don't know exactly what that means, the news pages of the Los Angeles Times are trying to just report what happened. The op-ed and editorial pages are trying to tell you what to think about it. You know, we're in the business of here's how you should interpret this. We're about opinion. And the editorial page, which is where the editorial about Prop 16 was, that's the voice of the paper. That's saying, this is how there's a board of, I think, about 12 editorial writers, and they get together 4 times a week and just talk about issues. And what what stance does the paper want to take on this, that, or the other thing? They endorse in every election. So they're talking about all the candidates for office, whatever office, come in and meet with the editorial board. The propositions, people from the propositions come in and talk about them. And then the editorial board writes, here's the LA Times position. So our position on Prop 16 is that it should pass. The flip side of that, and in the old-fashioned actual newspaper, which still exists and comes to my driveway every morning, opposite the editorial page is the op-ed page. Get it? Opposite ed editorial. So we're opposite the editorial page, and we're voices from the op-ed page is voices from outside the paper. And we have a few regular columnists who are sort of insiders, but mostly we're soliciting the views of people who don't work for the LA Times. And we get in unsolicited about 100 to 150 pieces a day. So there's a lot coming in. There is no shortage of opinions in America, I can tell you. We get just a tsunami every day of op-eds written by people that they'd like to have published. We also go out and solicit people who we want to hear from on a subject. So know going in that the bar is extremely high for what we take. We can publish 4 pieces a day. And so what are we looking for, and what gives you a better chance? We're looking for expertise. I read a lot. I know what's going on in the world. I'm looking for somebody who can tell me something I don't already know, or explains how to look at something in a way I really haven't thought about. So it's always awkward on the propositions. We're looking for something that goes beyond, vote for this because it's right, because of this, because of that. We're looking for somebody who can bring a fresh perspective. And, I was thinking when Amy was talking about coming from Mar Vista for the Mar Vista projects and how she made it out and a lot of people didn't. And I mean, that's right at the heart of Prop 16. That's why we care about Prop 16. If the playing field was level, if somebody who grew up in the Mar Vista projects had a level playing field with somebody who grew up in Beverly Hills, I mean, we'd all be delighted to not need affirmative action in the world. I mean, that's the goal, is that everyone has a real chance from the start, but that's not how it works right now. The playing field's not level. And so it's way harder for someone who grew up in the projects to get to college. I mean, if you're going to inferior schools at every point, you fall a little bit farther behind. Even if you're at the absolute top of your class, there's a ceiling at a bad school. And the kid at the really good school, there is no ceiling. So the smartest kids can really rise. That's not true. But that's something that people know. I mean, we're looking for, like in an op-ed, somebody like Amy to explain, okay, here's my personal perspective on this. This is what I bring to the table on this. This is why this thing is important to me and should be to you, that this is what I know from how I grew up in the world. So we're looking for people who have huge knowledge of a subject and bring a particular way of looking at that subject. Sometimes we help people along with that, like, I'm thinking about an op-ed we ran about China recently, and how a woman who works for Human Rights Watch, who knows this stuff just cold, turned in a piece about why Chinese students in the US aren't supporting the Hong Kong, Freedom for Hong Kong, and aren't supporting the protests in Hong Kong. And it was an okay piece, but I called her up to talk to her about it. And I said, you know, why did you write this piece in the first place? And she said, well, when I came to the United States from China to go to school, my first day at, I don't know where she was, like University of Michigan or something. My first day on campus, there were some Tibetan protesters protesting about China. And she said, you know, I saw them and I was Chinese and they were protesting about China. And I wanted to go up and explain to them, you've got it all wrong. Tibet is great for China. I mean, China is great for Tibet. We've built roads. We've provided better schools. We've brought electricity. You know, China is the best thing that ever happened to Tibet. Well, that's certainly not the view of most Tibetans. And she said that only over time did she come to realize that most of what she'd learned growing up in China was just wrong. And that it took her a very long time to get past the kind of propaganda she was raised with and to understand that China does some good in the world and China does some bad in the world. And that it took her a while to get to that. And that's why students from China don't instantly get Hong Kong struggle, that they're still overcoming many, many decades of propaganda. So what we did is had her put that into the piece so that she was writing about her own personal experience in that piece. And that really helped it. Another thing that really helps get an op-ed published, if it's funny, we have if there's something you can bring humor to, that's fantastic. We have a piece running today tonight and tomorrow are Yom Kippur, the sort of most sacred day in the Jewish calendar. It's the Day of Atonement. And we have a Jewish writer writing about how this year, it really should be God's turn to atone. That, you know, humans have for the last 6,000 years atoned for their sins on Yom Kippur. But this year, you know, with COVID, with George Floyd, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, maybe it's God's year to atone. And it's just a lovely, funny piece that reminds people about this holiday, but also takes it in a very funny direction. What I'd love is to hear any questions that any of you have about op-eds, about how to write them, about, you know, we're looking for things that are interesting. It's really easy and to turn down most of what comes in because it's just too boring. You know, I read it because I'm paid to read it. Nobody not paid to read it would. And so, you know, we're looking for things that are really interesting. And I love questions. So anything you have. I think there was just a question in the chat. Let's see. A recommendation for word count. Excellent question. Yes, op-eds can, you know, it's a small, we're still sort of tied to a print page, which means we have to fit them on a page. Op-eds are usually in the 700 to 900 word range. They can be a little shorter, but that's the rough range. Other questions? What?
There's another question in the chat.
Okay, and it is, when choosing which op-eds to publish, how do you take into account writer's political party? That's a really good question. You know, I would say that every single person on the op-ed staff is pretty down on Donald Trump. But we have an obligation to run opinions from every part of the political perspective. And, you know, one of the things I look for when I hire other op-ed editors is a willingness to engage with ideas they disagree with strongly and try to make those ideas as interesting and easy to read and good as the ideas they don't agree with. And, you know, I think for me, that comes from a perspective of, I think that we are in a place of such polarization in America that it's crucial to understand how other people think. Even if you disagree strongly, I mean, if you, let's say, just hypothetically, that you're not a big Trump fan. Well, the fact is that Trump was elected. And that means that, you know, somewhere near half of America strongly disagrees with you. And it's crucial to understand that. You know, if you want to understand how we got to where we are today, it's just crucial to understand. I mean, and there's a very conservative Republican writer who I disagree with on every single subject there is in the world. But one of the things that I have him do, I call him up all the time and say, you know, Scott, explain to people in Los Angeles, which, you know, 16% of people in Los Angeles voted for Donald Trump in the last election, 16%. So your job, Scott, is to explain to blue state California how red state voters really think. And, you know, recently I called him up and said, so tell me, how can a conservative Christian like yourself, how can you know, is Donald Trump the guy you want your children to emulate? You know, how can you forget all of these things that are important to you and vote for Donald Trump? And he wrote this excellent piece about, that I disagreed with every word of, about how it's as if he was in Kentucky, where he lives, and he needed to get to San Diego. And there was a train that was going to San Francisco, and there was another train that was going to New York. Well, he'd get on the train for San Francisco because that got him a lot closer to San Diego than the train to New York did. And that's how he explained his voting for Trump, was that Trump gets him a lot closer to the place he's trying to get, even though it's not the place he's trying to get, than somebody else would. And, you know, it's just, I think it's, so the long answer to that short question was, basically we're looking for opinion from all over the political spectrum. Okay, what's the likelihood of publishing an unsolicited op-ed with someone you've never had any experience with? Every single op-ed that comes in gets read. And our experience with the person or not doesn't, I mean, the way it works is they go into this big basket. You send to oped@latimes.com. And each day, one of the editors is responsible for reading that basket. And anything that is good, that you know, isn't, it's got to be an opinion we haven't published before. It's got to be something that's, you know, where the writing is pretty sharp. The person has to have expertise to bring to the table on the subject. It has to be about something. There has to be some reason why we would run that op-ed right now. Why is it important right now? And anything that meets that bar, whoever's reading the basket that day sends around to everyone else. So everything gets read, and there's no prejudice at all against first-time writers. You know, it's the same standard for everyone. It's not, you know, on the other hand, if you're writing about the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and you're somebody, you know, who liked an opinion she issued once, and we get an op-ed in the same day from somebody who clerked for Justice Ginsburg and knows her extremely well and can explain her reasoning on some issue, we're probably going to go with that one. So the competition's tough, but it's fair. Everything does get read.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
Seems like maybe a great way for us to show our support to Prop 16 would be to submit our op-eds to maybe multiple different publications. I don't know if you have any suggestions of other publications aside from the LA Times that you think might be good places for us to submit to try to rally some support for Prop 16?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are newspapers all over California that publish op-eds every day, from San Diego Union, North County Times in San Diego County, Orange County Register, yeah, San Bernardino Sun, Riverside Press Enterprise. There's not much in Santa Barbara at the moment. San Luis Obispo has a newspaper that's, the name of which escapes me now, the Chronicle and the San Francisco Chronicle, the Sacramento Bee. I mean, most newspapers publish op-eds. So, I mean, if you're writing about Prop 16, you need to let us know in the first paragraph, why are you writing this piece? You know, why is this something that's of import to you? What do you bring to the table on this that makes you qualified to write about this? And, you know, that can be a very personal thing, or it can be, you know, something connected to your expertise. So does a political ask lessen your chance of publication? How is the best way to navigate when you're writing about political positions? That's a good question. I mean, if I'm understanding it is, you know, when we get in things about the propositions, we're probably going to only publish one pro and one con, if that, on propositions. And just a plea to vote for this, you know, you should vote for this because, is not a very compelling op-ed usually. So if that's the political ask, try to think of it in a different way. Try to think of a way of convincing voters that isn't just saying, you should vote for this because. There was another question in the chat. Is there a blurb that one can share on Facebook or other social media in support of Prop 16? That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think that the power of Facebook is it reaches people who care about you. You know, you're going to reach your, and that personal, you know, people are, my husband is a documentary filmmaker and has a series on PBS right now called Hacking Your Mind, which is about how people make decisions. And one of the 4 shows is about how people make political decisions. And it's shocking the degree to which we are influenced by our peers, you know, by the people we care about. And so, you know, Facebook is a very, very powerful way to reach the people you care about and who care about you. And if they think my group thinks Prop 16 is very important, they're much more likely to get out there and vote for Prop 16 than if they don't hear from you personally. You know, my son worked on the 2012 Obama campaign, and they spent enormous amounts of time and money finding out as much about every single voter as possible, so that if they knew from Facebook that this was a person who loved cats, they tried to get a cat person to go to that person's door to talk to the person about voting for Obama. You're in this position where you know your friends on Facebook, you know them and they know you. You don't have to, so, you know, you making the ask really matters. So I would say use Facebook and all social media hugely to get people voting for you know, what you care about. Any other questions?
I'm going to drop that blurb. We have a digital persuasion toolkit. And then I would just be curious, a lot of these folks are brand new. What about starting with a letter to the editor? What do you?
That's really a great way. And letters to the editor most of them that come in aren't going to make it in because they don't follow certain rules. And the rule is you have to be responding to an article that was in the paper. So find some article that was about Prop 16 and say in your first paragraph, you know, I'm writing about this article that appeared in the LA Times on Tuesday. And then make your case for what it is, you know, try to use that article as a launch point for, you know, you can say the article missed this really important thing, and, or the article nailed it on this, and then restate that case, you know, make the case for what it is you think is important that was missing from, or that the article got right. And I think, you know, letters should be no more than 150 words, and short and pithy is really likely to get in. They get a lot of letters to the editor too, but so, you know, it's still a high bar, but it's a lower bar than an op-ed. So no more questions?
Yeah. I just want to make a plug for the LA Times, specifically around the fact that it is my go-to for local issues that are happening. No other publication in LA, I mean, LAist sort of, KPCC sort of, but no other publication does it in a way that feels even-handed in the same way, and it's really worth subscribing. They are desperate for,
you know what,
making sure people see. Go ahead.
No, it's totally cheap now too. $1 a week. I mean, $1 a month.
Yeah.
So right now,
I'm just saying, if you guys really want free press, you should put your money where your mouth is, because they need people to subscribe. That's all.
And
that was my plug.
If you subscribe today, I am extremely proud of the project that has eaten up my life for the last 2 months. Started today in the LA Times, and it is our apology for racism in the past and present, and vow to do better. And it's a project that's rolling. Today is the actual apology from both the owner of the paper and the editorial board. And going forward over the next week are 5 really fabulous stories that look at the paper's treatment over, you know, the last 140 years of Blacks, Latinos, Asian Americans, and there's some really good writing and really good, I think it's really good. Of course, I'm a little close to it.
One thing I'll add, writing is just so intimidating for me, and a lot of it goes back to like my education and the type of people I work with and their education and how great of writers they are. So I always struggle with that confidence. So I just say, guys, rip off the Band-Aid. One day I'll get published. But I took it's called the Op-Ed Project. I took their training, and they are a group of women that base their training on the fact that I think it's, maybe Sue knows the exact quote or the exact number, but it's like 60 to 65% of written words in media come from white men. So really trying to get women and people of color to infuse their voices into the media and into writing op-eds, because that's the only way we're gonna share our perspectives. Exactly like what Sue said, we all, to quote Little Wayne, we might live in the same building, but we have different views because we live on different floors, you know, like we walk the same paths, but we walk in different shoes. So anyways, so I really like, you know what she said. And then I know you guys are going to do some op-ed writing right now. This might be hard to go through, but the op-ed project tells you how to submit. They give you the email of like the boards and how many words it has to be. So I'm going to post a couple of those resources. And then somebody asked for our videos. I'm going to post those too. And then I'm going to actually post my favorite thing in the chat box, which was, remember I told you our floor speeches were right after George Floyd died. And so you see the members of the California Assembly rawly addressing racial dynamics. And it just shows you, like, compared to other states, just, you know, our government in California, their hearts are in the right place. So that's only 5 minutes, and it's just some of the most profound, like, in the moment ways of how they were addressing the not addressing the murder of George Floyd, but in that moment addressing systemic racism brought on by the murder of George Floyd. It was like a week before. So I'm going to put all those resources in the chat box. It's just a lot, so I wanted to give you a primer. Of course, none of the links work.
Well, great. I'm going to guess that means that nobody else has any questions. So I think that we're going to begin our portion of the session where we actually do the thing, right? Activism is no good if we just learn and put it off until tomorrow. So we give you time to do it right now. So you guys have learned about Prop 16. You have a lot of great resources that you can consult, all of these great links in the chat, these great videos. And so we encourage you guys to now take this time to write an op-ed and submit it, actually. Or if you don't have time to finish it, to at least perhaps, you know, maybe read it to a fellow, like maybe we can go into breakout rooms later or something like that, and you could read it to someone, so you could have someone to bounce it off of or something. I'm also going to be researching alternatives to LA Times to submit your op-ed to, and I'll put those up for you guys to see as well. But yeah, for now, I think let's do it, guys. Let's do some writing and utilize these great tips that, you know, Sue gave us. Really talk about in that first pair. I mean, look at how fortunate we are, guys, this group that we have right here. She mentioned, you know, a lot of op-eds are written by white guys. You know, nothing against the wonderful, beautiful, fantastic white men in this group, but we have a lot of diversity in this group. So let's take advantage of that as we're writing. So, you know, let's talk about where we're coming from, why we care about this, and maybe we'll throw in a little humor if we're lucky. If not, that's okay, because humor's hard. But yeah, shall we get to it, guys? Let's say that we'll come back at 1:50. So that gives you guys a full half hour to work on writing, you know, a 700-800 word op-ed, and to look at different places to publish it. Although we'll supply some resources on places that you can submit this op-ed. But yeah. Any questions before we maybe we can just pause our videos and mute ourselves and then come back at 1:50? Any other questions? Nope.
I'm going to keep an eye on the chat box if you guys have any questions about Prop 16.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. I also, before we take off, or, you know, you don't have to look at it before you start writing, but I also want to share a link to a great cartoon that I think people have seen around that just puts in visual form a great argument for affirmative action, just in case you want to use some of that. But I'll see you guys at 1:50.
Thank you so much, Sue. It was so fascinating. You guys do such great work.
Yeah, Sue, that was amazing. I don't know how we got you. We're so lucky. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Sue.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. We've got about 1 minute left. And during this time, I put together a list of other places aside from the LA Times that you can submit an op-ed, because it's probably in our best interest, if not all, you know, 30 of us are competing for the same spot at a publication, it'd be great if people have any connections to any of these other areas, if they could submit there, or even if you don't always have to be local to submit an op-ed to these places, but here's another 10 or so places where you can send those op-eds that you write today. And we'll make sure that this list is sent to you in the follow-up thank you email that you get. So you have a lot of different places that you can submit this guy.
Thank you for that, Denise. That's super helpful. Let's start to come back and turn our cameras back on. Oh wait, is my camera on? Yes.
All right, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Wrap it up. The last. Oh, okay. So what we can do now is we can just talk about what we learned during this presentation. It's a wonderful workshop. Let us know what you learned. What did you get out of it? How did you learn?
I personally learned a lot about Republican era California.
Oh.
Didn't know that we ever had an era like that.
I didn't even know we had that either. I didn't know that. I didn't even know there was such thing as Prop 209. So that was pretty interesting to me as well. So I thought it was great, very informative.
Thanks to Amy, I actually learned, she explained how the representatives in the Senate come together to, pass laws, and she explained it in such simple terms that it finally clicked. It's such a complicated system, but the way she explained it, it finally clicked.
Thank you for sharing, Luca. I do agree. Very complicated system. Anyone else want to share before we start to wrap up and close out for today?
Does anyone want to talk a little bit about what it was like to write or start to write their op-ed? Maybe, what went well, what didn't go well. Feel free if you want to share like a little portion of what you've written with the group. I think that would be really cool.
What I think is when I was kind of starting to write this is that I'm always, and it's a theme while I've been speaking up kind of for the first time in a long time about politics and racial injustice and just trying to learn as much as I can. I'm constantly second guessing my facts and not really feeling confident in what I'm saying is correct. So like I kind of went back and read a little bit more about Prop 209 and kind of came across the fact that David Duke from the Ku Klux Klan like supported that and tried to use that as a tool to then use as a persuasion as to why it's so outdated, why it's so wrong, and like to have somebody like that back a proposition that now Prop 16 is trying to argue against, that kind of circled me back to this like idea of color blindness, and I kind of wrote using that with the theme of, I think now we can all agree that now is not the time for rose-colored glasses. The year of 2020 has shattered the lenses and lifted the shades on race and sex discrimination, forcing us all to see in color. And I think I was raised to not see color. I think that just what made my family and my peers more comfortable, and kind of trying to persuade people to, no, this is reality, and ignoring color is almost, you're doing more harm and you're ignoring what's so blatantly in front of you. And I think obviously that's where I've ended this op-ed right now, but it's encouraging that I can, I want to continue with it and see where I get to. But how do you maintain that confidence in your facts? And obviously this is only a 2-hour class. I'd love to learn more and dive into all of these links, but any guidance on how to maintaining confidence and not second guessing all you've learned would be helpful to just actually, you know, to execute all these things that I want to do.
Jessica, I just want to speak to, because I actually used to work for Mayor Villaraigosa, who would submit op-eds, and he would have several people look at his op-eds before they were submitted. So, you know, just keep in mind, and I actually am reviewing somebody's op-ed who's publishing in San Francisco. So it's not like, don't expect that you're going to have all your, like there's a lot of professionals have several readers and fact checkers to do that. So in terms of feeling confident, I think you just have to have a lot of people read it, and people that you respect and are, you know, are, that you consider would have some context.
That's helpful. Thanks.
I'm actually curious to see, either by a show of hands or in the chat, how many people actually finished a draft? Some people that still need some more time.
Yeah, I didn't finish. I'm like halfway through the first draft.
That's good.
Look at that. If you guys are interested in doing that, look at the op-ed project. I learned so much from them. It is so, like, kind of, Jessica, to speak to what you're saying, not necessarily like I need the facts to be 100% perfect, but more so just like the confidence in general is really hard. And like, I know, like, the times I've tried to write them, like, I second guess myself and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like, and so I've just learned, like, I've only been published once and it was an LTE. Still very proud of it though. Just get through it. Just do your draft and then like rip off the Band-Aid. Don't second guess yourself. Like, and then go back and do it. Like, then go back and fix what you need to fix. But like, just like even getting through it the first time is really hard. But we're our own, like, we're the ones that stand in our own way. I hate writing. I'm so intimidated. And like, we had a Prop 16 kickoff for LA and the mayor spoke and all these things. But Meredith Gray's little sister from Grey's Anatomy, I forget her name, Kelly something. She, at the very last minute the night before, she wanted to do a little straight to camera video about Prop 16, and our comms department, who would write that script for her, couldn't do it in time. So I was just like, I watched some of her videos of interviews and like I researched like stuff, and like I was gonna give it to comms in the morning and I was like, wait a minute, I freaking love Grey's Anatomy. Like, I love Prop 16. Like, I can do it. And I just did it. I tried, and like I worked really hard on it. It took me a really long time. It was about a minute and a half. But like when she read it, like she's like, oh, this is great copy. I didn't say I wrote it. She sent the video back, and like my eyes welled up with tears because I couldn't, you know, having an actress deliver your words, you know, like, I don't know. And she said it, she made it sound so meaningful. And like, so I just decided that whenever like I get in my own way, like I'm going to remember that, you know, I do have it in me. I just have to let it out. Might take longer than some people, but to fix it, but you know, so I say, do it. And I'm so proud. I'm going to be better. There's a little story.
Thank you for sharing. Alrighty then. All right. So it's 2 minutes till 2. So I'm just gonna wrap it up now, and I just wanna let you all know that we have our workshop number 4 next week, next Sunday at the same time, 12 o'clock. If you need any assistance, just log into LA Works and you'll sign up the same way you signed up for today. And next week we'll be talking about medical. So it will be covering the medical aspects of like the injustice or the inequality for medical aspects next week. I will be sending out a thank you email later on this week, or I'll do the attendance this afternoon, and then okay. All right, I got my weeks mixed up. Actually, next week is Prop 15. So we'll be talking about Prop 15 next week. And then, yeah. So just sign up. I look forward to you all signing up coming next week. And we'll be starting at 12 o'clock. And then if you have any questions, just send me an email and I'll get back to you.
Before everyone runs away, though, before everyone runs away, I would love to get a group picture of everyone. I know I do this every week, but I love to be able to share this with our presenters as a way to say thank you. So would everyone mind turning on your video cameras and getting ready for me to just take a quick picture of everybody? Come on, get up close, say hi, wave, give me a peace sign, give me a fist, give me whatever you got. Show me that you're here and you are ready to fight for the rights of our of everyone in our community, everyone. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Before I leave, I apologize. I want to make sure that you all know that I will be sending out links and a thank you email. So just please take a look at them. We'll be talking about more about Prop 16 so that you're familiar with, like, I know we talked about today, but just so that you can have more familiarity with it, so that you can tell people in the community, you can get people to understand more about Prop 16. And then also I'll be sending out phone banking. So just look out for that email. All right? You all be safe.
Nice meeting
you.
everybody.
Big thanks to Amy and Sue again. Woo! See you next week.
Coming
Bye-bye.
out.